Throughout the program, we've been following developments in yet another mass shooting in America. Today's was in San Jose, California, where at least 9 people are dead, including the gunman who opened fire this morning at a rail yard. And while much of the country is calling for and supports stricter gun safety legislation, Texas lawmakers are taking the opposite approach, focused on solving gun freedoms. Republican Governor Greg Abbott will sign a constitutional carry bill cleared by the Texas House and Senate this week that would allow most adults over 21 to carry handguns without a permit, without a background check, and without any training. It's the latest evidence of how far to the far, far, far fringy right the state's leaders are, pushing a bill out of step with the majority of Texans, including many Republicans, as well as law enforcement in a state with a very recent history of mass shootings. From the New York Times, quote, versions of such a law had been proposed periodically over the last decade, but had not garnered much support. And the idea of constitutional carry was largely dismissed as a remote dream of the far right. But the 2020 election changed all that. As the Republican Party in the state shifted further right and moderate legislators feared being outflanked by hardcore conservatives. We're back with Matthew Dowd. Matthew, you've written about how unsound this is sort of politically and ideologically for Texas, but it seems like we're moving on another scale that's even more troubling. It's inhumane. This is a real problem that no one wants to solve, and I know you've made this comparison before yourself. Whereas some of them will even admit to being very eager to solve a problem that doesn't exist, and that's election security.
Well, Nicole, obviously another horrible, sad, tragic day in America, which we keep having, as the governor of California spoke very viscerally to in this. I'm here in Texas, as you know, and you've known ever since you know me, I'm a gun owner. Here I live in rural Texas. There's no, rational reason why this shouldn't happen, but for a small segment of Texas. And as you pointed to, the majority of Texans want this. It's what's really immensely troubling is that as Texas is actually moving towards becoming more purple, more moderate, sort of more in sort of the mainstream of states and less red, the leaders of the state are actually going in the exact opposite direction. They're getting more culturally, more socially conservative. Just think of what they've done in the last 4 weeks. They put restrictions in place on voting rights, immense restrictions in place on voting rights that they're finalizing the final bill on. They are only allowing women to get an abortion after 6 weeks. So most women who don't even know they're pregnant, you can no longer get it. You no longer have that choice in Texas. That was put into law. And now this crazy permitless handgun where you not only do you no longer have to have a permit, you no longer get a background check, and you no longer get training, all of which was in place in order for you to do this. Now that anybody can walk into a coffee shop, a hardware store, a grocery store with a handgun on their hip. And to me, I think actually Donald Trump has helped move Texas more into the purple column. It's not there yet, but it's really close. I think all of this social conservative stuff is fundamentally out of step with most Texans. People of faith and all that don't buy into this, but it is 25% of the state, just like most of the country, that pushes the levers of the Republican leaders. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, the lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, the attorney general, all levers are pushed by this very small element of it. And I think it's up to us Texans. We're going to have to do this in 2022 one more time and then time and time again, in spite of impediments put in place on voting in the course of this. But it's absolutely crazy. We've had multiple shootings in Texas, multiple death shootings, mass shootings in Texas, in a Walmart in El Paso, in a church in South Texas, multiple shootings over the last few years. And we're actually going in the opposite directions. We think it's more reasonable to put restrictions on voting than it is to put any restrictions on Texans' ability to carry a gun. It's just ludicrous. I think ultimately politically it'll catch up to the Republicans, but right now it's so insane, and it would be laughable insane if it wasn't so dangerous.
I had the same reaction to Gavin Newsom's comments. They were different. They were raw. There was a tipping point reached for him. I want to play some of them. Let's talk about it on the other side.
There's a sameness to this. And that numbness, I think, is something we're all feeling. All of us gathered here today, looking at this scene, listening to governors, mayors, chiefs speaking similar tone and terms, expression of condolences, all the right emotions and perhaps the right words, but it begs the damn question, what the hell is going on in the United States of America?
And Matthew, the President Biden echoing a very similar theme, issuing this statement. This is President Biden. I have the solemn duty of yet again ordering the flag to be lowered at half staff. Enough. Once again, I urge Congress to take immediate action and heed the call of the American people, including the vast majority of gun owners, to help end this epidemic of gun violence in America. Every life that is taken by a bullet pierces the soul of our nation. We can and we must do more. I don't know how to put this into an optimistic frame, so I won't even try. Do you think anything will change?
Not in the short term. I'm afraid nothing in the short term. One thing I think Joe Biden should do, I mean, if I were there, I would advise him, don't leave the flag at half mast until a gun bill passes. Don't take the flag down from half mast until a gun bill passes, because this is an ongoing tragedy that's taking place, raising and lowering it. Just leave it at half mast for however long it takes to get a gun bill passed first. Secondly, I think Democrats have been way too shy about running on this as a prominent issue in their campaigns. In many ways, I've watched them sort of skirt around it. No, I want to talk about health care, or I want to talk about climate, and I don't want to wade into the guns thing. It's too divisive or whatever. I think, like Lucy McBath in Georgia, who ran on this because of obviously the tragedy in her family, ran on it in a swing district in Georgia and won. I think this is a winning issue. A hugely winning issue that Democrats in state after state after state, not just the Northeast or the West Coast, which people view as progressive, but Middle America and Southern America, who are also concerned about this issue. Democrats need to take this and say, I'm not going to run away from this. I'm going to run straight into it and say the Republicans are stopping any common sense gun reform in America, and not be afraid to say it at every single stop and every single time. And I think if Democrats do that, in the 2022 elections, they could actually win a number of seats that otherwise they may not be able to win, like Lucy McBath did. But until we start taking this on as an issue, as a top 3 issue in America, which it should be, since the thousands and thousands and thousands of people die from gun violence every year, and we do nothing about it, not a thing. We don't do a thing about it. We just keep moving on, as the governor of California said. Democrats should take a page out of the playbook of Lucy McBath and run on this everywhere they possibly can, including in red America.